Okay, welcome to the first day of our new unit. As you can see, we are trying something new. Obviously, if we don't like this, we can change it up, but I think this is going to be really good. So just some basic things to make sure we're on the same page. You should have a piece of paper and a pen or pencil for notes. And basically anything that I write down, you should be writing down as well in your notebook. Okay, so today's lesson is 4.1. Quadratic functions, key parts. So our new unit is going to be on quadratic functions, right? Our last unit was on linear. Now we're going to be talking about quadratic. So let's actually define what exactly is a quadratic function. So quadratic functions, make sure you're writing this down. Quadratic functions are written in the form f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So this is like standard form of a quadratic function, right? We should kind of be familiar with this, hopefully, but this is standard form. So in a quadratic function, we have a number of key parts, right? And so that's basically going to be the lesson today. It's kind of understanding the key parts of a quadratic function. So what I want you to do in your notebooks is you're going to draw an axes like this, x and y, and draw a parabola similar to the one that I am drawing. Okay, obviously it's not perfect, it's just a sketch. And what we're going to do is we're going to define about 5 or 6 key parts, okay? The first thing that we're going to talk about is what we call a turning point. So turning point, so that's kind of like the vocab word. So turning point is where the graph changes direction, right? So it might be decreasing. As you notice in this graph, it's first decreasing and then it's increasing, right? And so the turning point is here, which is where the direction changes. And another word for this, as many of y'all may know, this is known as the vertex, okay? We're going to pretend that the vertex is just 4, -5. I made that up, okay? So this right here is what we would call our turning point. I'm just going to write TP, okay? So that is our turning point. The next vocab word or vocab that I want you guys to know is what we call the axis of symmetry, okay? So the axis of symmetry is a vertical line that cuts the graph in half. That cuts the graph in half. Okay? And because I'm lazy and I don't want to write axis of symmetry all the time, I'm just going to call it AOS, right? So in this case, the axis of symmetry, it cuts through the vertex, right? So my axis of symmetry would be x equals 4. Whatever the axis of symmetry is, that's also the x value of the vertex, okay? So they're kind of related to each other. Next up, we have let's change the color. Next up, we have our y-intercept, right? And we should know what the y-intercept is, but it's basically where the graph crosses the x, or the y-axis, my bad. Where the graph crosses the y-axis. I don't know why I always say intercept. Where the graph crosses the y-axis. So this right here, this would be my y-intercept. And along with y-intercepts, we also have our x-intercepts, right? So our x-intercepts, kind of the opposite, is where the graph crosses the x-axis. So if you notice, this isn't always true, but here we have actually two x-intercepts, right? Because it's crossing the x-axis twice. So this is what we would call the x-intercepts. There's two of them, okay? And then just to kind of relate this to other stuff, right? We've talked about domain and range. And similarly, we can define domain and range. So domain, remember, domain is all the possible x values. And if you notice, this graph is going on forever, right? So there's actually, the domain is all real numbers. And that's always going to be true, okay? And then lastly, for the range, remember, the range is all the possible y values. Now, if you notice, the graph is not going below -5, right? It's always going to be above -5. -5 is the lowest point. So our range is y is greater or equal to -5. And it's always going to be the y part of the vertex, right? So you can write that down if that's helpful for you. Okay, so at this point, you are going to move on and try some problems talking about these key parts, and then we're going to kind of talk about how to solve for some of these things algebraically.